Hello guys, welcome to today's video. This is going to be an English video with Chinese subtitle. I assume some of you is new to my channel. My name is Ronnie. I have been doing poker videos and analysis for the past 1.5 years. For those who know me, I'm sure you noticed my energy level is much higher than normal because today is a very special episode. We are going to do something new and inspiring. The reason I'm so excited now is because we are having one of the world's best players in our channel right here. His name is Mike Mcdonald. He was ranked world number 5 in 2014. For poker beginners who started playing poker in the past few years, you may not know about him. But if you have seen him playing, it is very impressive. There's no way you can forget about him because his signature staring is so memorable and effective. And we are going to talk about it later. I have mentioned him a couple of times in my past videos, and I received multiple comments asking me if I know any update about Mike. So today he is here with us, hoping to answer all your questions about poker, about life, and he is going to give you some tips about how to improve poker by the end of this video. So stay with us. Hello, Mike. I didn't realize this is such a long introduction. I hope you are still awake.
Yeah, no, it was a great introduction. I'm quite impressed. I haven't heard that might be the best introduction anyone's ever given me, so I appreciate that, Ronnie.
Like I said, we have not seen you play for a while, for a very long time. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so basically about 4 years ago, I kind of took a step away from poker. Launched a company called PokerShares. PokerShares is a place where anyone can go and invest in poker players, bet on poker players. It's kind of like a market to get players closer to the action in a lot of these big events. And so that was I'm usually of the mentality that playing poker at a high level, it sort of takes full focus. You really need to dedicate yourself to it, and if you're not working that hard, someone else will. And I didn't really want to be both involved in running that business and seeing myself kind of slowly decrease down the poker rankings kind of thing. So I figured rather than try to cling on to playing poker, I was like, hey, let's kind of return to totally being just recreational mindset. Play a few times a year, but not go play this the super high rollers, and not trying to compete the way that I used to. Not trying to play for the high stakes and whatnot. So I did that. And then around a similar time, I started becoming fairly interested in Bitcoin. I first invested in Bitcoin early 2014, kind of at the top of the last run up. And then, didn't invest heavily or anything. And then I had all my coins stolen from me on an old exchange, Cryptsy. And then I was like, okay, I don't like Bitcoin. This isn't for me. And then, I kind of, I heard more people talking about it through 2015 into 2016, and then sort of late 2016. And I was like, okay, let's give this another try. Let's be smarter about it this time. And then just kind of, started investing more, started, becoming more interested in the Bitcoin space. And then, just kind of saw how it was growing, and it really just felt like an industry I wanted to be a part of. It felt like a very cool thing. So then I launched, another business that does cryptocurrency trading, and we launched that kind of end of 2017, early 2018, and I've been spending a lot of time on that, where I just think that it's such a new market, such an immature market, that I think there's a lot to be done there. So I've actually, I don't talk about it. I mean, you can tell from my tweets that I'm obsessed with crypto, but I haven't in too many interviews mentioned that, I spend, more time on crypto stuff than I do on PokerShares. So that's been kind of the better part of the last 4 years for me.
Well, that's interesting. We are going to definitely talk about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoins in the later part. Because myself is very interested in itself. And I've been investing in Bitcoin in 2017, much later than you did, but I still think it has a bright future. So we will definitely talk about it later. But first thing first, how did you start playing poker? When did you realize that you're actually quite good at the game?
Yeah, so I started the first hands of poker. So, I played, some random 5-card draw and, stuff like that as a kid. But I think when I was about 14, I had kind of two things back to back that happened. One was I went to this math camp where people played all sorts of different games there. And, you know, at some point people played Texas Hold'em, and I just kind of got told the rules of Texas Hold'em, and I won, which was kind of cool, winning the first game we played. And again, at a math camp as well, where, you know, all the kids were pretty smart. And then sort of a couple months, maybe a month or two later that summer, I used to play chess competitively. And my chess coach, the one day we were just kind of bored, and he asked if I wanted to actually learn some like proper poker strategy. You know, he had made, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 playing online poker, and he just thought he was, you know, this was probably right around when I turned 15 or so. And he was maybe 22 or 23. And so he was kind of like helping, you know, make money beyond just giving chess lessons, also playing some poker. He showed me some of the basics, recommended some books to buy. And then originally the first reason I ever deposited onto an online poker site is I used to more than poker, I used to like playing blackjack. We had a casino night one year at school, and that was my favorite high school event. And I thought blackjack was a cool game. And, you know, I had those little plastic poker chips from a dollar store or something, but to get a proper set of poker chips back then used to be something like $150. And then I found that there was this site where if you played 250 hands of poker there, they'd give you a free set of poker chips. And so I only wanted to do this so that my dad and I could play blackjack, you know, so I was like, okay, I just gotta survive 250 hands of poker and lose less than $150. And it's better than buying a set. So I did that. And then after reading a couple books and actually made a little bit of money, and just kind of kept those profits, you know, bought some more books, you know, started playing a little bit more. And before I knew it, I was kind of, you know, once I got to a point I was making, you know, $6 or $7 an hour, I was like, okay, I never need a part-time job. You know,
yeah,
I won't have to work yeah, exactly. I won't need to work at McDonald's or something. And then about, probably closer to when I turned 17 or so, I started making pretty decent money. And sort of, you know, a lot of people have these dreams of Vegas, have these dreams of world championships, have these dreams of like where they're going to be in 5 years. For me, it was always just the next step in front of me. I'm paying 1 cent, 2 cent. I want to be playing 2 cent, 4 cent. I'm playing 5 cent, 10 cent. So it was, you know, there was a time when I was, you know, already all my friends were playing in the big tournaments. I was investing in people in the big tournaments, but I wasn't old enough. I still never really considered, oh yeah, like one day I might be playing these big tournaments too. You know, I was always just looking one step ahead of me instead of 5. So I never really, you know, I was never really, you know, ever envisioned playing on such a large stage, but eventually, you know, kind of blinked and I was like, oh shit, you know, here I am, kind of.
Before you realize you're already that good.
Yeah, I was just kind of just focused, you know, each time I played poker, just kind of wanted to play my best, win that time. And then next thing you know, you're playing high stakes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy the most out of poker? I'm sure different people have different answer for that. What do you like the most about it?
That's a good question. I like the hands where I really feel that I, you know, owned a good professional. Like, you know, when I'm at a table with someone who I think is a respected player, you know, someone who I think is, you know, like, you know, owning a fish is not that exciting, but when you're up against someone that you view as, you know, a top 1,000 or top few hundred player or whatnot, and you play a hand against them, and, you know, either it's a live thing where it's just like, you're giving away so many tells, I know you're bluffing, or a strategic thing where it's just, you know, I've kind of, you know, studied your game well enough to know that you bluff way too much in the spot, and then you make some very light call, and they have some hand that should have been too strong to ever consider bluff with, to where, you know, hey, this guy was 80% bluffs. You know, anything where you're playing against someone that is quite good, and you just feel that you demonstrated that you're better. You know, I think that was one of the things that you kind of like, that I miss the most about playing, I suppose.
It's interesting you mentioned when you own the poker, the guys who are really good at it. So because it has been many years, who do you think was the most intimidating player you played with in a live tournament?
I think that's a good question, and it really varies year to year. like let's say as an example, I'd say everyone in their era, I would say kind of 2008 or 2009 Phil Ivey was the most intimidating for me. But toward most of me playing poker, I didn't, view him as good as I did early on kind of thing. So it's, say by the end 2016, he wouldn't have been kind of high up on my list. So it's, every era would have been different. Some of the guys that I think, did well for, the better part of when I was playing. I think Dan Smith is someone who very much, stood the test of time. Steve Chidwick, Steve O'Dwyer. When I left, I would say, maybe number one would have been Fedor Holtz. He was kind of less years because he was kind of, more on top for, about 2-3 years instead of, a lot of guys who were on top for 5 or more years. Who would some of the others be? I think at that time, Igor Kurganov, I think, was playing very well. Dan Coleman was another one who had kind of a short window, but was, very good kind of for his, year or two of really being on top. Yeah, there's a Connor Drynan, I think, was one. There was a bunch of guys. I never had kind of one standout guy, but kind of throughout the better part of the super high roller circuit, those would be, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some names. Like I'm sure I'll a minute from now I'll be like, oh, I forgot him. But those would be kind of 6 or 7 guys that I thought were pretty consistent with their game and pretty tough to play against.
You mentioned in 2008 and 2009, you thought Phil Ivey is the most intimidating. And when you mentioned that name, I realized when I first saw you play, I thought, wow, I'm going to talk about your signature stare.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, because when I see you do that, I realized, wow, I wonder what he will do when he is against Phil Ivey. Because he likes to stare at his opponents as well. So, yeah, like, what are you hoping to achieve when you're doing that, like staring in that way? And what would happen if they are staring back? What will you do? And what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer the kind of what am I trying to find when I'm staring at someone? I'm just mostly trying to find if someone looks different than they normally do. If I've seen someone, value bet 3 times and he looked kind of the same way all 3 hands, and now he looks a little different the 4th hand, you can likely think, okay, he doesn't have just a normal value bet again. He's probably more likely to have, a bluff, or, especially if he's kind of an amateur player, maybe a hand that's so strong he's nervous. He has 4 of a kind, and the reason he looks different is because he's so excited by his 4 of a kind. So a lot of it is just, when you read books on poker tells and stuff, they put so much emphasis on very specific tells. The guy touched his ear, that means he has a flush, something. But in reality, I think most of poker tells is just kind of just sensing if, things don't feel the way they normally feel. And if the person's kind of behavior feels a little bit different. And so that would be most of what I'm looking for. Beyond that, especially in the less competitive tournaments, like in the main events or some side events, or even when the stakes get high in a super high roller, when, some of the opponents are less experienced in them, a lot of it as well, beyond just trying to pick up reads, it's kind of, every time you're in a pot with me, you're going to get stared down kind of thing. So a lot of that can get people to be more cautious. So I think there have been, especially in main event type hands, there have been a lot of scenarios where it's like people are so averse to playing hands against me that when someone goes and 3-bets me, I might be able to make some folds, fold an ace queen offsuit to a 3-bet or something, when someone else might not be able to do that. But when I'm against like a sufficiently tight player, it's sort of, hey, I don't think this guy is just making his 3-bet with 7-6 suited when he knows he's going to spend the next 5 minutes getting stared at, kind of thing. And some people go the opposite way. If someone's sort of that that confident 21-year-old kid who's used to playing behind his computer and doesn't want to get kind of owned by the more routine pros, a lot of times you can see sort of the swagger of the kid. You just know he sees my stare and is intentionally going after me looser than normal to prove that my stare does nothing. And, a lot of situations there, you can just be like, okay, I'm 4-betting this guy with any two kind of, you know, there's a lot of, you know, most people I think get tighter, but I think a few people get a lot looser, and they often sort of make themselves apparent just sort of the more you do you know, the more you kind of do at the table. And then the next comment was, what do I do when someone stares back? The answer is usually just kind of keep staring. You know, for me, I never really stare when the action's on me, or like I do a little bit, but I often just kind of want to, you know, play with my chips, make my decision, and then stare at them kind of. So, you know, sometimes you get the situation where you raise, a guy calls in the big blind, and then the flop comes and you're staring at him, seeing kind of his reaction to how he looks at the flop. Well, if he stares back at you, well, now he doesn't know what the flop is, kind of thing. So like a lot of those situations where it's like, when I'm in position, I'll always be staring at the guy, trying to get his reaction to what the turn card's going to be, etc. Whereas for me, when I'm out of position, I'm not just staring for the sake of staring. Like I'll look at what the turn card is, and then, you know, I'll start making up my mind. So, you know, there are some guys who really just want to win every staring war, and at some point the dealer will go to them. The action's on you, sir. You need to figure out what the river card was. You know, so yeah, no, you do get into some staring matches. And, you know, I think I was, you know, better at them than most people. I think there are some people who would usually, you know, beat me. You know, I think Steve O'Dwyer would beat me in a staring contest more often. I think there's a few other guys that I think had, you know, would, I'd be like, shit, now I got to stare at this guy for 4 minutes. So, you know, there's some people who would usually get the best of me, I think. But most 9 guys out of 10, I feel like I can, you know, keep the intensity on longer than they can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When they are trying to prove something so hard, it's more likely for them to make mistakes as well. So they want to beat you when in staring, then they will lose in the poker game. So
yeah,
great that you mentioned live tails. So, you know, in 10 years ago, there weren't many people thinking about GTO or talking about GTO. And nowadays, there are so many young players coming out, and I don't feel personally that they focus a lot on live tails. Instead, they may just stare at the table, then do their own thinking. So do you think in nowadays poker, the live tails are less important than before?
So I think it depends on what environment you're in. I think the higher the stakes and the more competitive an environment you go in, the less that live tells matter. Just because, you know, if you think about it, let's say 10 years ago, you wanted to make a big bluff in a huge pot, you know, with your 7 high or something, and you weren't sure if it was a good bluff, but you just decided, I'm going to pull the trigger and, you know, bluff Mike Mcdonald or bluff Phil Ivey or something. Likely you had some sort of like emotion attached to that. And what you're kind of sniff out is that sort of emotion. Whereas now, if you've just done, you know, play entirely GTO, and you know that the solver, 100% you're sure the solver would encourage you to bluff here. Now, instead of you having emotion associated with the situation, you have sort of more logic. And I think you're going to give less tells away, because when you're sitting in that moment making that bluff, rather than feeling weak because you're making an emotional bluff, you kind of feel strong because, you know, you're making a logical bluff. You know, you have some emotions associated with winning chips, losing chips, but you kind of, I think that the new generation, even if it's the exact same hand, has more confidence when they make that bluff, because they know it's computer approved, rather than they have to tell their backer, and then their investors are like, why'd you do that? You wasting our money. Now you don't get to play these tournaments, you know? So I think it gives people more confidence. That said, I think it lends itself to overconfidence, where I think a lot of the kind of, you know, if you look at the guys that are, you know, that are crushing these days, yes, a lot of them play GTO, but it's not as if those are the same guys that are the biggest winners online in all circumstances. And I think you'll probably have a lot of guys who are, you know, kind of big online winners, good with solvers, and then go play live and assume everything will work. And then the guys that have 10, 15 years experience playing at high stakes will, you know, maybe be able to make up for the fact that their game is a little bit less fundamentally strong, with the fact that they're so much more experienced with kind of understanding the human component of the game. And then on top of that, when you go play a main event or any kind of easier tournament, I think the live tells kind of come back into play more. I think that, it's like for, some people made this comment. I think this is a little bit overstated, but when I go play the World Series main event each year, I don't play, poker really, and I'm 4 years behind the times, but some people kind of made the comment that for someone like me, who the only poker I play is in such an uncompetitive environment, they think that I might still be one of the players with a bigger advantage there, because if every day you spend battling the best in the world, you get so used to these things. You're like, oh, well, now I got a 3x pot to turn, and you play this, high variance strategy that is more like the poker you always play and the poker is right becomes something that's kind of too advanced for your opponents. Yeah. And the fact that I don't really know what that super advanced 2020 era GTO poker is means that, maybe a few-year-old game can still be fairly competitive against kind of bad enough players. so I think there can be a little bit where, the GTO play is definitely far from the most profitable play when people aren't that good.
I totally agree with that. So what were the biggest challenge you faced when you were playing during the 2014, 2015, when you are at the best of your time in poker things?
Well, so I mean, the one thing I'll say there about poker is at times like that, you don't really feel many challenges. Like, it's just, it's weird. It feels like poker shouldn't be as streaky as it is, but I've just had times in my poker career where I just felt kind of so down. I felt like I can't win. Every tournament I bust I'm kind of questioning myself. I'm kind of thinking, am I still beating these guys? Am I maybe giving away some tells? Am I not studying enough? Am I studying too much? Am I not sleeping enough? You kind of question everything when it's going bad. And sort of throughout that 2014, 2015 era, I was just kind of winning. So it was easy to just, it was easy to not be too concerned. I think 2012, I had a losing year. And that was like, the challenges faced were definitely like, more, it matters more when you have, like when you're actually in the kind of face of adversity rather than when you're on top. Like when when you go tournament to tournament and, you keep being the bubble boy, you're investing in players who are losing, you're just kind of, you're studying, but it's maybe not paying off, like when you have that environment, I feel like that's much more the test of who has it and who doesn't in poker. Like it's one thing to be in a good mood when you're winning. It's another to be able to kind of recover from the downswing when you're losing, both from a, financial standpoint, but also kind of like an emotional and work ethic standpoint where, most of a downswing, it's not even about the money. It's kind of about the toll it takes on your confidence, and how you kind of overcome that. And so I think that was, those are, I think, the better kind of scenarios or questions to look at. Like how do you deal with, when things are the worst they've ever been, kind of thing. So
yeah, I guess every player has a period of time like that. I'm sure there are a lot of my audience who are in their early 20s or just new to poker, but they start to making a profit. And then at some point, they may think, okay, why don't I do this for a living? Why don't I spend more time on this? And I wasn't sure like what kind of advice to give to them, because I know it's a very risky decision, and there will be a lot of thought process and decision-making process. And what would you suggest to them that the things they need to really think about it, then make a decision?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the one thing I would kind of comment on is, as you're moving up through the stakes, a lot of things you like, the situations that you've been presented with at lower stakes, the same types of things will happen at mid stakes and will happen at high stakes. How you deal with the downswing, how you manage your finances and things like that. To where, I think if you're seriously considering poker, like the two comments I would make, especially early on in this tougher environment, are one, if you're doing well, you're probably your your best investment kind of thing. I think a lot of people have this idea that, okay, you're making some money, you should go put some in stocks, or you should go invest in some real estate, or, things like that. But especially when you're in that stage where it's like you're going through, you go from a year ago, you were making $200 a week. Now you're making $1,500 a week or something. Well, that's a pretty nice trajectory. But if you're withdrawing $1,500 a week to go and buy stocks or, whatever it happens to be, you're not building a bankroll, and you're not going to be able to increase that further kind of thing. So I think, the one thing I would say is just playing in a way that, if you have kind of set goals of where you want to be, the more that you withdraw, the more that you move away from poker, it kind of gets in the way of your kind of poker progress, I suppose. So, I think if you're pursuing it, I would focus on, kind of, always playing within your bankroll, but kind of giving yourself as much bankroll as possible by not kind of taking it, outside of your, what you treat as your poker money. And then adding to that, the other comment I would make is that, if you're in a spot where things you're improving rapidly, your stakes are going up rapidly, like anything you kind of want to buy or spend on, if you want to go buy a car, okay, maybe if you waited 9 months, you can buy that car without it having to move down in stakes kind of thing. So, I think a lot of people, when they, and this is like when you're in that growth part of your career, like it's one thing if you're thinking about playing seriously and you made the same amount this year as last year as the year before. Okay, it doesn't matter as much. But if you're kind of had that, exponential type curve where, every 6 months you're making twice as much as you were the 6 months before, you want to kind of keep that growing. Cause I've known a lot of players over the years who probably what's prevented them from ever getting to high stakes or getting to playing the big live events and whatnot was kind of spending too much or gambling too much on sports or, or withdrawing too much to do, other safer investments early on. Whereas, if you're improving, if things are going well, like I think, it's unlikely that, many investments out there are going to be better than investing in yourself if you're really giving poker your all. Even if you're thinking, coaching from this great player is too expensive, maybe I'll get it eventually. If you can invest in coaching from that great player, it's probably going to help you out more than, than a few expensive dinners or, whatever the alternative would be. So I would say from that perspective, there's like I think a lot of people who have the talent don't, they hurt themselves from things kind of away from the tables more than things at the tables. Like I don't have too much as far as as far as specific poker advice. Join this site, go, raise these hands from under the gun. I'm not giving poker specific advice, but I'm saying away from poker, there are a lot of things that kind of don't get touched on as much. And I would kind of, recommend those things.
Now, after 4 years, you are leaving the poker games. When you look back, do you feel there's anything you learned from poker that actually helps you a lot when you are doing other businesses, your current business, or like embedded in your thought process and make you really make good decisions in your futures and other businesses? Is there anything like that?
Oh, I mean, I kind of feel like almost all of it is transferable.
Really?
The kind of, this sort of, I think one of the big things is, hey, you've got to sometimes you just need to make an important decision, and you only, you just want to come up with the best decision you could in 2 minutes. Let's say someone bluffed you on the river and then they froze time, and you could spend 2 months researching that hand. You could spend 2 months, the guy's frozen there. You can stare at him for 2 months. You can write out every hand he could possibly have and be like, oh no, he wouldn't have raised so big if he had ace jack. Oh, he wouldn't have, crossed it all down. And then you could read some books. You could maybe go research that player. You spend 2 months and you come back and you got to decide call or fold. Your decision probably isn't that much better than it was after 2 minutes. And I think the same can happen in a lot of business decisions where you sometimes need to make something that's pretty important. You have a lot of factors to weigh, and you can do an okay job of weighing those factors quickly, but then you could also drive yourself crazy spending 2 months on a small decision. So I think the poker helps with, okay, I'm not trying to make an A+ decision, but I'm trying to make a B or a B+ decision with the information I have. So I think that's helpful. I think the risk management is helpful to kind of, a lot of people, I feel like, you have optimists who are always dreaming of the best things possible to happen. And I think that's too many entrepreneurs. And then you have pessimists who are always afraid, well, what if this, what if that? And I think those are a lot of people that, maybe should have become, probably had the ideas to become entrepreneurs, but were too scared, I guess. And then I think kind of poker teaches you this sort of like realist type of approach where it's like you go in and you kind of, you hope for the best, but plan for the worst kind of thing. And I think that helps you to kind of figure out what risks are necessary. With poker shares, we've tried a lot of new markets. This Bybit thing will be one of them. A lot of different things where a lot of, other competitors might not touch a new product like that. Whereas for us, we kind of shrug our shoulders and think, hey, what's the downside if this doesn't go well? It seems like a lot of these things, there's more upside by kind of expanding our offerings than there is downside by, offering something that, we can't do in a profitable fashion. And it's a lot of these things can be great exposure as well. And then I think poker, it also teaches you to be very, like objective in your decisions. If something moves against you, if like let's say as an example, GG Poker has added staking within their client, which is something that I think would, take away a moderate amount of room for our business. Because for them, it's so natural. You've already got your money on GG. You're looking at this tournament. You just click a button and you buy someone. Whereas going to our site, you need to go look separately. You need to compare our lobby to their lobby, make sure it's the same tournament. If you don't have funds on our site, you need to deposit it. Whereas if you're already playing the tournament there. So, I think that's an example, like, their implementation of what we're doing, I think is more natural. It's cleaner. It's in all honesty, just better. And it's just something where a lot of people might be angry. They might be kind of spiteful, but I think poker, it sort of teaches you like, hey, we knew that was a likely thing that would happen eventually, that poker sites would start, kind of offering more kind of staking type products right through the client. And it's not a big deal. It's not as if this was an unpredictable thing. If we were, we're kind of, you just got to be realistic in, what you see in your business, how much you think it can grow, how much you think it can scale. And I think a lot of people, who don't have that poker background where you're used to kind of taking bad beats and stuff might kind of let this sort of, setbacks to your business affect you too much. Whereas for us, it's kind of like, when someone else in the industry makes a good decision, we can applaud them, even if it, hurts our bottom line kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that bad beats happen every day. So it's amazing how we can make analogies from poker parallel to everything in life that we experienced, and there's almost an exact thing happened in the poker scenario that we have faced already. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned just now about your poker shares and you mentioned cryptocurrency, Bitcoins. What is your strategy about making these cryptocurrency investments, and any advices to people who have always been thinking about trying to invest in cryptocurrency but never tried?
Yeah, I mean, so my biggest belief in cryptocurrency, I suppose, that I talk about is I just try to, let's say tomorrow you like looked at, an alien came to Earth and they could look at, money versus cryptocurrency, or, something, or the world tomorrow was looking, how should we have money be created? I kind of think the scenario, like I think almost no matter what country you live in, it's very difficult to have that much trust for your government. You can like some politicians, but you still might not feel that they'll, allocate funds properly. You might not, trust that they have their citizens' best interests. I think from anywhere in the world, I think it's really difficult to have 100% faith in your government. And I think the idea that your money, like if you let's say, if I'm in Canada, okay, my bank account's in Canadian dollars. My house feels unrelated to that, but my house, it's kind of denominated in Canadian dollars. Like if Canada gets, invaded by someone, okay, my title of land ownership is worth nothing. You know, if I have a car, it's titled in Canada. You know, it's like everything is basically denominated in Canadian dollars. And it's kind of when these, you know, politicians are fighting such kind of corrupt battles, it's sort of why should everything I have be tied to my government? And so I think my interest in Bitcoin, more so than in the cryptography or any other element of it, is just it's a form of money that it's valued by the community rather than valued by one major authority. And I just think that, you know, to me, that just makes more sense. You know, it just makes more, you know, if I were to envision what things will look like 60 years from now or 100 years from now, instead of it being 0.1% of the world's, you know, money is denominated in something that's outside of government, I don't see why it shouldn't be 50% or 90% or 100% kind of thing, where it just doesn't really seem to make sense to me that so many people have so much trust for money in their bank account, for money that's insured by their government, etc., and thus far so little trust in something that's, you know, censorship resistant, something that is valued anywhere in the world, etc. And so that's kind of my thesis on my favorite thing about Bitcoin it's I think the ideals of it, you know, the ideals of how money works in most countries, to me feels kind of dated. And if we were to reinvent money tomorrow, I don't think we would do it the same way. And I think it's just I think it's somewhat likely that this will just sort of be a wave where things, you know, people come to Bitcoin for the price and they stay for the revolution, I suppose, where it's like everyone, you know, it seems like the more time I spend around it, the more time I spend thinking about it, the more that, you know, it just seems to make more sense to me than how traditional money works. So yeah, and then in that regard, you know, I think anyone who bought Bitcoin 2016 or earlier, unless you were like a very bad trader, has had a decent.
There's no way to.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm usually, you know, not like there are occasional times when I'll short Bitcoin, but it's like, it's pretty rare. And, you know, I'm a big believer in it overall. So I'm usually just kind of, you know, at certain times I'll think, okay, it seems reasonable to sell some here or whatnot, but I'm usually just always more interested in buying than selling kind of thing. And that's kind of, you know, I don't think I'm, you know, overly sophisticated in that regard, but I'm just a big believer in Bitcoin in general.
I heard that you've been doing some campaign and some activities like trying to build a team, something like that, to treat with you. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I may have undersold my trading a little bit. You know, I run an algo trading Bitcoin fund, and we trade, you know, a couple hundred different altcoins across most major exchanges. And, you know, I don't even know what most of this shit does. You know, we have very small amounts of a lot of these coins, but we're just kind of always arbitraging them across exchanges, kind of with the general idea of, you know, take profit in Bitcoin, take profit in USDT, etc. And so, you know, that, you know, I don't make that many kind of big trades, but, you know, if I were to look, you know, I've probably made, you know, 10,000 trades today or something, you know, something like that. You know, we do a lot of trades, but we're not, you know, the general thesis is just have that be an avenue to accumulate Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I mean, then touching on kind of building a team of traders, you know, yeah, with this Bybit competition, you know, I've gotten a lot of friends throughout poker who are somewhat into crypto trading, and then also some friends, you know, doing similar things to I am, which are spending all their time on crypto trading and, you know, running, you know, various crypto trading operations and whatnot. And where, you know, I just thought this was a cool format. I want to get a lot of my friends, both from poker and crypto, involved, and kind of, you know, I think a lot of poker players, even if they're not the best traders, they're still good at kind of looking at payout structures. You're used to playing a winner take all tournament. You're used to playing a satellite where top 15 all play the same. You're used to playing a super KO bounty where you care more about knocking guys out than you do about winning the tournament. You know, we're used to like roll with the punches, you know, oh, the chip leader is here, we've got to adjust to his stack and whatnot. We're used to those things where it's like, I think this Bybit trading competition, it's not that much it's closer to a poker tournament than it feels, kind of.
Yeah, like, another analogy.
Yeah, there's so many analogies. Like I know, like speaking of playing blackjack with my dad used to be, he was never that good at poker or anything, but he was one of the best tournament blackjack players in the world, where it's just like he sort of realized blackjack is similar to poker, but everyone thinks of poker as a skill game, so people go and focus that way. But everyone thinks of blackjack as a luck and gambling game, but tournament blackjack is just as much skill as tournament poker. You have to like analyze your bet sizing, like pay attention to position, and it's all about just kind of maintaining slightly higher stack sizes than your opponents and like upping the volatility when you're behind, lowering it when you're ahead. And so, there's, whenever you just have a payout structure, you can kind of alter any game based on that payout structure. So I think that's, we're going to have a Telegram group to kind of discuss how the team's doing. I'm going to try to get as many people that I know involved as possible. And yeah, I'm pretty excited for it. Like I like seeing kind of innovation within the space. Poker players all love overlay, and this Bybit thing, they're giving like a $2 million overlay, which you never see that in poker. In poker, it's like there's a $50,000 overlay, and you have 500 guys on social media all being like, "Come for the overlay, come for the overlay." And it's here multi-million-dollar overlay is just, I don't know if I've ever seen that in poker. It's pretty incredible.
Exciting. How are they supposed to like find your team and know how to join you?
Right. So, my Twitter's Mike Mcdonald 89. If any of them already follow me, or if they don't, you can just go there and I'll be posting out kind of links for both, to Bybit site to join the team and also to the Telegram group. Like I'm sure there'll be people who aren't even participating who just kind of want to see what people are talking about and whatnot. So we'll just kind of talk about, team strategy there, talk about how we're going to approach this competition, etc., and just kind of use that as the platform to talk about it.
Sorry, I said I was having the last poker question earlier, but when you talked about blackjack earlier, I realized there's another question I've been always discussing with my friends. So you said luck and skill, right? I'm sure no one can deny the luck factor in poker, but do you, for a person as good as you, I'm sure you believe that skill is more important than luck? Or you think it's like even, how do you distribute the allocation?
The way I always describe it is kind of day to day, mostly luck, year to year, mostly skill kind of thing. I would say,
in the long run.
I would probably say like, say you go play a month of poker, I would say then it's maybe, 50-50 luck and skill or whatnot. But if you play a day, it's, 80% luck, whether you win or lose, unless you're really bad. Like if you're the worst player ever, but I'm more talking about someone who's, one of the best versus someone who's pretty good. Who does better over a day is mostly luck. And then over the course of a year, I think it's kind of, 80-90% skill kind of thing.
So before we finish this video, I promised my audience there will be tips for beginners to improve in their poker game. So anything you can do?
Yeah. So so one thing I would say for tips is it's good to, good to find some friends that are playing in similar games to you, or even playing a little bit higher stakes games than you, where you can bounce ideas off them. Like it's one of those things, almost no one's gotten to high stakes poker doing everything on their own. And so if you play a hand, it's easy to play that same hand 100 times and you made a mistake 100 times. Whereas if you can be, either, roommates with another poker player who can, see some of your hands, or you can send them to friends over, Telegram or WhatsApp or whatnot. And they can be like, oh, I would have done this, I would have done that. I think it's good to kind of bounce ideas off, either friends or, if you don't have any friends who play poker, just a community, whether it's a forum or, a poker channel or something like that. So I think that's a big thing. And then I would also say for true beginners, I'll give, some strategy advice. Like usually try to be more aggressive than passive. Like the simple idea of, if you're calling, the only way you can win is by making the best hand. If you're betting, you can win either by making the best hand or by making them fold the best hand. So, there's some kind of simple things like that a lot of people play very, very passive early on. And it's, playing, you don't need to go crazy, but, trying to be the aggressor more often than your opponent is the aggressor, I think is pretty helpful. And then, I would also say paying attention to good players, like whatever game whether you play cash games or whether you play Omaha or whether you play short deck or tournaments, kind of look at the plays that the best players are making and look at all the dynamics. Like, don't just see someone raise and think, why do you do that? And then you realize, oh, he's in the button. Like, pay attention to what position they're in and whatnot, and think, wow, this guy did something that I wouldn't have done. Why is he doing that? And like, poker commentators love acting as if the top players are doing stuff because they're crazy or they're trying to, they're trying to do something, but like they're usually doing something because it's right, so
make it more epic.
Yeah, exactly. Usually the reason they've done is because they've studied hard and determined this is the right play. So if someone does something, if someone does some crazy river bluff raise, it's usually for, there's some method behind the madness. And if you try to think, if you try to think, why did he do this play or whatnot, rather than just think, whoa, it's crazy he did it. Try to think, okay, well, why did he pick this hand? Why did he pick this situation? And at least come up with your own hypothesis. It gives you, you can at least learn something from sort of every hand you see. So yeah, I would say just kind of, focus on, being somewhat critical of your mistakes, try to figure out when you've done something that you think you could change, and pay attention to the best players, what they are and aren't doing. And those would be some of my general tips for how to approach the game.
Great tips. And if I can add one more tip to that, is to watch my videos. Because I've been doing that for a very long time.
That's the biggest tip. Watch all of Ronnie's videos, start to finish. Click subscribe. Watch all of Ronnie's videos. That's how I got to be playing poker at such a high level. I knew nothing. Then I opened Ronnie's YouTube. I watched one video. I was already winning an EPT. Two videos was already playing the high rollers. So watch all of Ronnie's videos.
Mike, you're too good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure there will be other questions we will have in the future, and I hope to have you back into my channel to share more, whether in poker, in life, or in cryptocurrency, anything. Very, very nice to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice chatting to you. We'll have to do another interview to celebrate our my World Series of Trading victory. Yeah.
Yes, we'll do that.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, see you.
Take care.